friends. We thank you so much for joining us. This is Looking Up, a podcast for Christian women. I'm Kathy Pollard, one of your hosts, and with me is Carla Moore, and your other host. And hey, and good morning to you, Carla, although good evening to you. Carla is currently in Thessaloniki. You're in Greece, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
I looked up how to say it.
Is it how they say it?
Well, I found like three different ways.
Oh.
Thessaloniki.
Oh.
So
Okay.
I'm not sure. They probably accept them all. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where we are.
So we all say Thessalonica.
Yeah.
From reading about it in the Word, it's so amazing that you're there. And I know you have some fun things to share with all of us about that. Before we get into that, we really do want to thank everybody for joining us every week. It's our hope that we can encourage our listeners to keep looking up and remember that God's in heaven, God's in control, no matter what's going on in this world. And today's topic is going to be asking a question: what are you watering? And so I look forward to getting into that with you, and I feel like it'll generate some interesting discussion. But before then, why don't you tell us a little bit about how things have been going and maybe some highlights of your trip?
I'll just put a throat lozenge in my mouth. Sorry.
It's okay.
It's been going really well. We had 35 in Rome for the last week. We got there a little bit early because there was a big, huge bike race, second only to the Tour de France. And it was going to end in Rome. Like it started in another part of Italy and they had daily races. And then the last day was this past Sunday in Rome. Mm-hmm. So all over the Roman Forum area, they were building these huge stands, and that was where it was going to end up. So we were just worried about, well, I wasn't, John was worried about our route, being able to get where we needed to go, whether walking or driving. Mm-hmm. So we kind of had to turn our itinerary around a little bit so that the bus could get around the town a little bit better on other days. So we were 35 in Rome, and then yesterday we flew from Rome to Thessaloniki, Thessalonica, whatever it is. And 11 more people were here, met us here. So okay. We have 46 now total.
Oh.
We had, you could do the full trip or you could do Greece only. So
I see.
Some of these people are doing Greece only. But anyway, we've been lots of different places. Yeah. If you only have a few days, they'll be here. We'll be here until a week from today. So 8 days is what they'll spend.
That's a great idea.
Pizza. I've had pizza and pizza and pizza.
Nice.
And pizza. And it's the good kind, the wood fired with the chewy crust.
Yes.
And San Marzano tomatoes. I've had plenty of pizza and pasta carbonara, and mostly just those two things. In fact, John had a carbonara pizza the other day, and it was
spaghetti on the
pizza. No, it was just the bacon.
Okay.
It was a white sauce. I'm not even sure what the sauce was made of, but it was so good. So good. It was greasy, like bacon grease all over it. There's no telling. I was doing so good not eating before we left. I was eating breakfast and lunch and then quitting after that, and that hasn't been happening here. And I knew it wouldn't.
But
anyway, I always end up talking about food, don't I?
Well, we all want you to. That's what we're interested. Who cares about all that history and stuff? What'd you eat?
Yeah, it's Italian food.
That's right.
That's what I look forward to in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, it's all good. We've seen the Colosseum. We've seen Circus Maximus. We went to Pompeii one day and Herculaneum. I had to write it down because I'm not real good at recalling things. We went to the Vatican Museum and St. Peter's Basilica, and just the museum at the Vatican is amazing. Just all of the archaeological Egyptian artifacts and Old Testament things. It's pretty amazing. Don't much enjoy a lot of things about it, but it was kind of cool because we were there later in the day. We were there from about 4:30 until they close at 6. And you know how you go through the museum and you end up in the Sistine Chapel, and then you go out from there. And we were the very last ones in the Sistine Chapel, so we saw it empty.
Oh,
and I don't know, most, usually you're shoulder to shoulder, nose to nose.
So crowded in there.
Yeah. And John made friends with one of the guards that was kind of shooing people out. Of course he did. And so he kind of shooed out all of the rest of the groups, and we were not in the actual chapel part, but that little vestibule right outside, so you can see into it. And they had turned the lights off, and it was just, oh, it was really cool
Mm.
just to think about the history in that place, and all of
Yeah.
those paintings along the wall, the ceilings. So anyway, it's been a good trip. We haven't had any issues. Thankful, we just really are thankful for that. Thank God for all of his protection.
Yeah.
But we've got a good group. Got a lot of young people on this trip. We
Mm.
actually had to count them up today because they were going to Philippi, Philippi. I can't remember how to say it. It's different here.
Mhm.
And she said they could get a discount ticket if they're under 25. So I counted, and there's 12 people that are on
Oh,
this trip that are
wow.
under 25, and that's very unusual. So
Yes. Mm.
that's been fun. Yeah. One of them is Lois Webster. She's
Mhm.
one of the sisters podcast. So we've been having fun together, and she's just she's a sweetheart. We've had fun. We had a guide from Israel, and you know Lindy. She's our
Mhm.
usual agent in Israel, but it's her cousin, actually second cousin. They've never met each other in person, but we've worked with him before several times in Italy, and he brought his 16-year-old son to help him, and we enjoyed being with them. So anyway, it's been a good trip. We still have another week to go.
Mhm.
We'll see Corinth. I think that's tomorrow. I can't remember. We'll end up in Athens and see the Mars Hill and the Parthenon. And John would have been so embarrassed if I'd said Pantheon because that's in Rome.
I always have to think about that though before I say it, which is which.
Yeah, Pantheon, Parthenon, two different
Yep.
things. So
Yep.
anyway, but it's
Yeah.
all
Well, I'm
good. So
glad that you were able to squeeze this in. I know our schedules are a little bit tight because it's morning time for me right now, but it's evening time for you, and you guys are all getting ready to go to dinner. So we'll be
mm,
mindful of the time and try and keep this decently brief so you can
yeah,
get on with your exciting
we're
day.
not known for being decently brief, are we?
No, but we're doing better. I wouldn't
Yeah,
say
we
they've
are.
been brief, but they haven't been as long, right?
Instead of an hour and a half, they're an hour and 15 or an hour
Baby
and
steps.
45. There was a few of those. Yeah.
Yeah, what there I think in our history we've had some that were close to 2 hours. I don't know how that happens.
So
I'm sure it was your
we
fault.
just, sure.
That's
I'm the long winded one, right?
right.
What's going on
No.
there?
I have a bunch of random things to share with you.
Okay.
I wanted to share a little shout out first so I don't forget. But um, my sister and her husband on the 31st will have celebrated 30 years together of marriage.
Mm,
And so, congratulations to them. And we're keeping Dobby for them for a few days while they take off on a much deserved getaway. So, if somebody
oh,
rings the
fun.
doorbell or something, then
Dobby and Ollie.
you'll probably hear both of them. Hopefully, that
If
won't
you combine
happen.
those names together, you get Dolly.
Dolly, I probably called him that too. And it was also interesting to me that it showed up in my memories this morning on Facebook that 5 years ago today, Christy was diagnosed with cancer for the first time.
Yeah.
And so, most of our listeners know that she had a second round with cancer here recently, but she has received, she had lab work done recently. She received really, really good results. And we're so thankful for that. And I'm just thankful that here we are 5 years later. She's doing good. And we're so thankful for all the prayers that people have prayed on her behalf. So just
Absolutely.
wanted to mention that really quickly. And then the other things are
Mm-hmm.
we went on a little anniversary trip, which
Mm-hmm.
was kind of a last minute surprise for me because, we have Peaches and it's not just easy to pick up and go anymore
Yeah.
when we want to. But Neil talked to Jeremy. And so Jeremy came over and milked for us every day, twice a day. It's such a big ask.
That's a good friend.
It's a really good friend. And you just cannot, you have to kind of save it for like when you really need to want to leave town because you don't want to just always turn around and say, "Can you come milk for us? Can you come milk for us?"
Yeah.
But so it was just a 3 or 4 day trip, but it was
To the
great. We
beach,
got
huh?
to the beach. We went to Anna Maria Island in Florida, and just neither one of us took our laptops.
Wow.
That was a big gift
Quality
from
time.
for me from Neil. He said he wasn't going to run while we were there, which is huge
Mm-hmm.
for him. And he wasn't going to take his laptop. It was just going to be us enjoying our time together. And so that was awesome.
That's great.
And then when we got back, we came back to big storms again,
Hmm.
tracking the live tornado trackers and all that and staying up, and actually spent some time in the basement on Sunday morning. I ended up getting sick when we got back, and our electricity went out Sunday morning. It was stormy, lightning, thunder. Neil said that while they were in Bible class at Lehman Avenue, the electricity went out at
Mm.
the church building. And Kevin Eubanks, one of our elders, kept coming in to the classroom and updating. Okay, we may all be meeting in the MPR, the multipurpose room for worship, because this will be the safest place to be, and then you go back out,
Yeah.
come back in. Never mind. I think we're going to meet. So it was kind of a unusual
Alex
day.
had so
And
much of that.
I didn't know that when we moved here that we were in Tornado Alley, but it kind of feels that way. And we didn't, I don't think we had any tornadoes touch down too near us. We have some big limbs down. We had flooding in our basement when we got up the next morning. So that, the water in the back came all the way up as far as the fire pit, which is right outside our
Oh, wow. Yeah.
back door, basement door. So we ended up with a little bit of flooding in the basement, but Neil was shop vacuuming everything, and we were running box fans and spraying like stuff to keep mold away. Cause I've,
Hmm.
very cautious about that. I always think about baseboards getting wet and what can you do to make sure mold
Right.
doesn't set in. But so that was kind of an exciting welcome home.
I think, yeah, that's been going on in Texas too. And we've been here, but I did hear from Jake and Liz that both of their cars were damaged with like golf ball size hail.
Oh
So
no.
I haven't heard anything from Dripping Springs. So I'm assuming
Mhm.
it wasn't too bad there, but man, just lots of it this year. Lots of
Yeah,
people going
everywhere
through
it
some hard
seems like.
times.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Last night I was at Bible class, and Joyce Johnson, I've mentioned her on here before, so I wanted to share this. She gave us a homemade pie. I don't know what she does. She's just a great cook, but and I'm not even sure what kind of pie this is. It's chocolate. It's sort of like a chocolate chess pie, because it's got that kind of texture, but
Hmm.
it tastes a little bit different. I don't know if she sneaks peanut butter in there or what she does, but it is so good. And she brought us this homemade pie last night, and it had the sweetest letter in there, and it was celebrating three things: my birthday, our anniversary, and then our Neil had said something about, 5 years ago we came and tried out here at Lehman Avenue, and we're so blessed. So it was that anniversary also.
Wow.
And,
And she
and
remembers all those things.
I know it was just so thoughtful. It's one of those things where, as we're eating that pie last night, I'm thinking it's not just the thoughtfulness and the gift, but the notes. It's like that the things that they said, going the extra mile and just writing out some thoughtful things. It's one of those gestures and people that make you think, I want to be
Hmm.
just like her.
Yeah.
I want to be better in this way. I want to be thoughtful to other people in this way and make their day and warm their heart. And so that was very sweet, very
That's
thoughtful.
sweet.
Hmm. Yeah.
I
The only
had
other thing I have is that Neil found he's always tucking eggs in his pocket, when he goes out to
in his blue jeans pockets.
He's rarely wearing blue jeans unless it's winter.
Well, in his slacks pocket.
It'd be like shorts, like running
Okay.
shorts is
Cargo shorts.
typically, yeah,
Oh,
that kind of thing. And but when he's running out to take care of Peaches in the barn, he'll come back and check. I don't remember if I mentioned this on here before, but we ordered a different chicken thing for it's some like a chicken tractor. It's like a bigger thing that you can move around your property. And when he gathers eggs, a lot of times he just tucks them in his pocket, and sometimes he'll forget that they're in there, so that's been fun. But the other day he had, all right, now I'm backtracking and getting bogged down in details, but he usually, whatever he wears to the barn in the morning, he'll take off and hold aside to wear to the barn in the evening, so
hmm.
that he throws all of it into the wash and it's just one outfit.
Yeah.
Well, he comes back and he puts on those barn clothes again in the evening, and this time he found plums in his pocket because
How does he forget those?
I know our plum tree is bearing fruit. And he finds them, and he's been like bringing in handfuls, but apparently this time he just stuck them in his pocket.
He's gonna have scrambled eggs with plums
And
in
I
his
know, I thought
shorts pocket.
it's just, who would have thought? There's so many moments of who would have thought.
Hmm.
When we were living in Colorado, we never would have pictured moments like this. Neil forgetting eggs in
Hmm.
his pockets or plums in his pockets.
And talking about chicken tractors.
He's probably going to
I
kill me
mean,
for saying this, but I made a comment yesterday about if Peaches is ever too much, because, I'm allergic to hay. The burden of milking is falling on him. If she's ever too much, if it's hampering your style, taking too much of your skin, just whatever. If we ever just need to let her go, you're more important to me than Peaches. You're a piece of my
mhm.
whatever. So I'm having this magnanimous in my mind conversation with him. And he actually got a little teary and
Mhm.
said, he was so going to kill me. I'm sorry, Neil. I love you. He said, I've bonded with that cow. And he said, and just the thought of letting her go kind of has me a little bit choked up right now.
Aw,
And I just,
Neil.
I didn't really react in a moment, but inside I'm going, what? Because this whole thing was my idea, and
It's
he
like
was
a
like,
twisty
nope.
turnover.
I know. So look at that. Who would have thought?
Well, it's what is that? The little match girl where she sells something, and I shouldn't have been brought up because I can't remember the whole thing, but it's a little, you
We
remember what
do
I'm
that
talking
a
about?
lot. No.
The little match girl, she sells something to buy something for someone else who has sold the same thing that,
Oh,
yeah. So you're
so
like,
it's a classic play or
yeah, it's
something.
an old,
The
old,
girl cut off her
it's a
hair
Dickens
to buy,
because she's
I thought it
cold.
was like a watch or something for her husband or whatever, but he sold something to buy her a comb for her hair, but she had cut off her hair to get something for him. Or
Yeah, but where do the matches come in?
I don't remember the matches. Matches. We don't need no stinking matches.
It's called the little match girl, though.
Yeah, I don't. I'm very foggy. Someone can help us out.
You're froggy too.
Foggy
Okay,
and
now I'm
froggy.
gonna
Okay.
have to go look up the little match girl and find out what I'm talking about because I can't remember.
Well,
I have,
somebody's going to help us out with that. I know. And
oh,
so
no doubt, no
you
doubt.
guys
I
don't know
have
what you're talking about.
that happens frequently. So I have some good news.
Okay.
And I've known about it for a good long while, but they finally announced it so I can say it publicly. So we're gonna have another grandbaby. Micah and Courtney are gonna have another baby. So they are due sometime in November. They told us about it.
November.
Um, I don't know. She's showing, so it's kind of
So
funny
she'd be
because
about 3 months along.
she's like 15 weeks now,
Okay.
15 or 16 weeks.
Hmm.
And but it was right after we came back from Colorado because it was on Easter. They told us on Easter because we had been with them at Courtney's parents' house, and then they said, "Could we stop by for a little while?" Because we had gone home, and so of course, come by. And when
Were
they
you
came in,
suspicious? Like, did you
normally I am
wonder?
about things
Yeah.
like that,
Uh-huh.
but we had just gotten home from Colorado, or no, from the trip, or I don't know, somewhere. So it was kind of like one of those, yeah, let's spend a little bit more time together. So
Hmm.
Livy came running in and she climbed up on John's lap because she is all about Pa, and rolled around on him for a while. And I didn't think anything about it. But then Courtney said, Livy, go see Yahya. So John turned around, put her down on the ground, and when he did, I saw her shirt said Big Sister. And
That's
so I was like,
cute.
what? Gonna have Big
Oh,
Sister? It's so hard to see her as anything but the baby because she's been the
hmm.
baby for so long. Darcy is the baby now, but
Congratulations.
yeah, we're real excited. So
Congratulations. That's so exciting.
another baby, number 7.
Wow.
Thank
Very
you.
special.
It is very
Happy
special.
for
We
you
don't take
and
it for
happy for
granted.
them. Happy for them too. Be praying
Yeah,
about the
yeah.
pregnancy.
Thank you.
That's
She's doing
awesome.
well.
Mhm.
Hmm.
That is good news.
It is.
All right. Is there anything else that you want to share before you?
Probably, but I can't remember it if there was. That's all I wrote down.
Okay. Well, then we'll go ahead and get in our topic so that we can
Okay.
keep this moving.
I
And
didn't
I
set a
said,
timer.
I kind of peeked at when we got started, so I'm keeping
Okay.
my eye on it. But I said we were going to talk about what are you watering, and it's from this little graphic that I saw this week. I showed it to Neil, and it was really simple, but it was so impactful. And all it was a picture of these, excuse me, like 4 or 5 plants in pots with a watering can. Oh, great. Excuse me.
Ribbit.
Yeah, maybe you should talk for a minute.
No, this is your topic.
I know
I
it.
don't know.
Hang on.
This
Let me
topic
look
of
away.
talk. Everyone look away, look
Sorry,
away.
I hate that. Okay, but it was a watering can poured out over these, potted flowers or whatever. And each of those pots had a word on the front of it. And the first one was positive, and it was the word love. And then the rest of them, none of them were positive. They were words like anxiety, self-doubt, um, what were they? Like worry or fear was one of
Mhm,
them. And all it said was, what you water grows. Whatever you choose to water will grow.
mhm,
And so it was such a great visual. And I've always thought about that before in light of the positive side of it, that
mhm.
there are things in our life that we've talked about being intentional about, but I've never really thought about some of those negative things that if you choose to water them, they will grow. And in my mind, how easy it is to think about what that even looks like because it's so easy to do. What does it look like to water fear or anxiety or self-doubt? And it's our thoughts, how we talk to ourselves, what we give into, what we allow to come out of our mouths, maybe what we focus on. I actually think I jotted down. Sorry. Oh, I said them all. Worry. Did I say worry?
Mhm.
Worry,
Yeah.
self-doubt, anxiety, and fear. So, and there could be other ones, that we could add to that list. So, it's sobering to me to think that we could be just as maybe unintentionally watering some of those negative things that we don't want to be a part of our lives. But what are we doing to cut them out of our lives? And you and I have talked about that before on our own time, outside of recording, how I want to be better about not complaining. And then, when I'm talking to you, I'm like, you are not going to believe what happened.
Won't
So,
me.
yeah, watering that whole vice or bad habit that I say I want to not be a part of my life. And so I thought we might talk about that for a few minutes today, and that it would be something that would be sort of an easier conversation to have since you don't have a lot of time and you're traveling. And I'm sure you're not spending hours thinking about a podcast episode. So
Oh, I
we're
stayed
just
up most of the
thankful
night
for.
last night.
Is that what it was? Well, good. What do
Yeah.
you have?
Forgot. I forgot I was
Oh,
fell asleep.
yeah, you forget everything that you spent time thinking about. Well, this is terrible.
Well, I do
But
have,
that,
you
go
can clear
ahead.
your throat if you need to. It
Okay.
made me think, when you brought this up, it made me think of something that I had read a long time ago, and I went to find it, and it was an old, like a Cherokee story where a grandfather was trying to teach his grandson about life,
Oh,
and
yeah.
he told him that there's a battle going on inside of him, and it was a battle between two wolves, and one of them was evil, and he was full of things like fear and envy and hatred and scorn and pride and self-pity and inferiority and all those things that you mentioned. I was trying to think if there were others, like resentment, sorrow, guilt, and lies and things like that. And then there's another one that's full of good things like joy and peace and love and hope, serenity and patience, and all of the good things that we try to put in our lives. And so he's telling his grandson about this battle going on, and the grandson says, well, which one wins? And the grandfather says, whichever one you feed. So it's the very same thing that you're talking about. But
Mhm.
what I started thinking about was, it's not just about starving the bad one, but not it means feeding the good one, not
Right.
just not doing it, but making sure that we're taking care of the other side and feeding the good things. So, yeah, I just think it's a really a great topic to be that word that we always talk about, intentional about
Mhm.
what we're putting into our minds. And it's biblical. It's biblical.
Yeah. And that's a great point too, because if you are feeding things like contentment and peace and joy, it seems like it'd be a lot harder to indulge in or have your mind consumed with those negative things. So
Hmm.
that's a great point. Well, I thought we would look at Second Peter chapter 1. My mind just
Okay.
automatically went there because starting at verse 3, and really, um, if you ever just want a text to camp out in for a week for personal Bible study, this would be a great one to go along with our topic because I printed off this text and I started looking at it and I'm wanting to highlight everything. It's so powerful. And starting at verse 3, it says, excuse me, his divine power has granted to us all things that pertain to life and godliness through the knowledge of him who called us to his own glory and excellence, by which he has granted to us his precious and very great promises, so that through them you may become partakers of the divine nature, having escaped from the corruption that is in the world because of sinful desire. So I'm going to go on to the part that really pertains to our topic, but I wanted to start here because I love how he puts the emphasis first on what he has done. And if you'll notice, it mentions his divine power, his own glory and excellence. He has granted to us his precious and very great promises. And what an effective way to start out putting the emphasis on him and what he's done and what he can do with a topic like this, because we're about to do some personal introspection and
Mm.
do a little bit of a heart check in things that can be so hard to root out of our heart. And sometimes we just get so distracted and busy, we forget there are things that we should be watering. And so if we start out by putting the emphasis on him, and he's done all of these things so that we have everything we need for life and godliness, which is really what we're talking about today. What are we watering in our own life? And he says, so that through them, all these things that he's done, we can become partakers of the divine nature. And I looked at that word, and my first thought was that divine nature has to do with character, putting those Christ-like, trying to put those Christ-like attributes in our life. But it really has to do with our identity and who we are because of him and because of what he's done. And so when we think about that, it takes us to verses like 1 John 3, verse 1. See what great love the Father has lavished on us that we should be called children of God. Again, look what he's done to make us who we are, children of God. Or Romans 8:17, if we're children, then heirs, heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ. This is who we are. We're heirs and joint heirs with Christ. So this is our identity. So this divine nature is possible because of what he's already done. So what comes next is the how we want to be because of who we are. And what comes next, starting in verse 5, for this very reason, make every effort to supplement your faith with virtue, virtue with knowledge, knowledge with self control, self control with steadfastness, steadfastness with godliness, godliness with brotherly affection, and brotherly affection with love. For if these qualities are yours and increasing, they keep you from being ineffective or unfruitful in the knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. Whoever lacks these qualities is so nearsighted that he's blind, having forgotten that he was cleansed from his former sins. Therefore, brothers, be all the more diligent to confirm your calling and election. For if you practice these qualities, you will never fall. For in this way, there will be richly provided for you an entrance into the eternal kingdom of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So that's reading down through verse 11.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I just went back through that whole, I sort of underlined things like make every effort, supplement, increasing, be all the more diligent, practice these qualities. All these words imply intentional practice, something
Mm-hmm.
that we're choosing, mindfully choosing to do. And then at the end again in verse 11, he goes back to the beginning and reminds us there will be richly provided for you the entrance into the eternal kingdom. So he starts with what God has done and then ends with what God will do. And because of these things, everything in the middle is what we want to be focusing on and what we want to be growing in. These are the things that we want to be watering.
Um, it's funny. It's always interesting to me how you and I go to different passages, but this makes so much sense. And it's like, why didn't I think of that? Because it's the building blocks that we need. But also just what you started off talking about, his divine power. It's his divine power. And how many passages are there in scripture that talk about how it's not up to me when I think about
Mhm.
um my thought patterns and how I live my life, how I think, um, talking about rooting out all these bad things and trying to put the good things in sometimes seems really hard because it's part of who we are. How we think is, it's a very intimate because nobody but me knows what's in my head. Of course, there's things that come out of me that you can kind of tell what I think about and how I think. But it's when you think about changing that thought pattern, that thought process, and um, that focus, it's daunting to
Mhm.
think, can we do that? But it's not, I can do it because it's not my power, but because it's his power. And is it First Corinthians 11 that talks about the full armor of God? I'm so glad that you and we share this. I know it's in one of the Corinthians. It just had a whole ladies' day on this, and I'm terrible at. But talking about the putting on the whole armor of God, and it's talking about in the power of His might. That it's not up to my power; it's up to His power.
Mhm.
So we can do these hard things through Him. But what my mind went to was Philippians 4, thinking on these things,
I thought of
and
that one too. Yeah.
yeah. So whatever things are true and honorable
Mhm.
and right and pure and lovely and of good report, praiseworthy, things like that, think on these things. And when we really do focus on those things instead of, the things that Colossians 3 tells us to take off, then I think that it sends our mind in a different direction, better direction rather than the bad direction. So,
Mhm. Yeah. When you were trying to say it's in one of the Corinthians, Neil listens to this usually when it comes out while he's running on the treadmill. I can always
oh,
tell when he gets to a moment when we've done something like that because he'll holler up the stairs the passage. And of course, by the time this airs, I don't even know what he's talking about. I'm
yeah,
like, what do
okay,
you,
smarty pants.
or I'll get a text from him and all it is a verse reference because
Yeah.
he's been listening and he's just like, that's what, whatever verse it is.
I'm
But
just terrible at that. I
I
can't.
know, me too. But you were talking about the power thing, and that's what struck me
Mhm,
about those verses. That's really where I camped out on because I wonder if I excuse myself when I say, but it's just so hard.
mhm,
And these are hard things to do. All these negative things, that the fear, the anxiety, the worry, the self-doubt, they're so hard to not water and or to be mindful about being joyful every day in all
mhm,
circumstances or filled with peace or unselfish. In my mind, I feel like I'm
mhm,
always going, but it's so hard, but it's so hard. But we have, we can tap
mhm.
into the power of God. He's already done all these things for us. He promises to be with us, like you already pointed out, and that we can do things through His strength, His might, His power. So perhaps the real question is, have we really put in the effort? Really put in the effort? Or just,
Mhm.
and by we, I mean me, said, I want to do this or I don't want to be this way, but really put in the effort. And if I really put in the effort, it's not impossible. And
Mhm.
it reminds me of a class that I took with Denny Petrillo one time. And he said that, long time ago, it could have been back when he was in college or something. I don't really remember that part, but a friend of his and he were having a conversation and they said, is it really possible for a human to go a whole day without sinning? And, they were saying
I
this
think
would
I've heard him
cover,
say this
yeah,
too.
this would cover things that you think,
Mhm.
I mean, we're like pat ourselves on the back if it just doesn't come out of the mouth. But I might do a
Mm-hmm.
whole lot of mind screaming or
Yeah.
snarky things in my head. The things that we think, the things that we say, the things that we do. Is it possible for a human to go a whole day without sinning? And they agreed that they would each try and put their all the next day, put their all into not sinning in any way. And now I can't ask you how you think it turned out because you heard him say that too. But they met back together the next morning and they learned, yes, it's possible. It is possible if you're being intentional about it and you're putting all your effort into it. It's possible.
Mm-hmm.
And think about everything that covers with attitude, gossip, selfishness. Not to mention all the other things that we would classify as immoral activity. But um, maybe it's just needing to remind ourselves of all these wonderful things that God has already done for us and all the ways that He promises to strengthen us. As we're thinking about what am I intentionally today going forward from here on in. If you're listening to this on a Monday morning, you've got the whole Monday ahead of you. What are you going to water today? By the things that you think and the things that you say and the actions that you choose to take.
And most of it is thoughts.
Yes.
At least that's what I struggle with because
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's fairly easy to not do the things that I shouldn't do
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason. And I guess maybe because um I don't want others to see me doing something that might lead them to do something wrong. I don't know. There's just those things are not as tempting to me. But the thought
Mm-hmm.
process and
Mm-hmm.
thinking right, that's pretty tough.
Yeah.
And there's some ways, at least there's one area in my life that I have, and I promise I'm not patting myself on the back about this, but I have seen a change in how I think. So I say that only because there are so many others that I have not conquered, and I haven't even conquered this one. But just I, and you know me, so you know that I've not conquered this area, but just how I think about people, and that I try to think the best of people. And if someone is in a doesn't act the way they should act, I usually will think maybe they had a bad day, or
Mm-hmm.
there's something going on that I don't know about. I feel like I am pretty good about that. And that sounds prideful, and I really don't mean it to be that way at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's just because I've worked on that, because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to be the kind of person that excuse me, I don't want to be the kind of person that always looks at someone and uh, just thinks the worst about them. That repels me when someone else is like that. So I
Yeah.
think that probably encouraged me to not want to be that way.
Well,
But
and
then
here's the
there's
beauty of
so many
that.
other.
Well, what did that do for you though? It took discipline and intentionality to get to that point. You had to control your thoughts, change your heart and attitude. And what did that do for you? Even though it took some discipline and intentional, things on the front end, did it make your life harder? No, it
It brought me a lot of
probably
peace.
brought you a lot of peace. Exactly. It made
Mm-hmm.
your life better. And to me, that's the amazing thing about all of this. It kind of sounds like we're saying it's not good enough just to go through the motions. It's not good enough just to right thing. You're never going to be good enough. You're never going to measure up because you also have to have a great attitude about it and you have to be happy about it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not saying that at all, but I think we are pointing out that Christianity is a from the heart practice. It's a from the heart religion. And think about all the different verses where Jesus says, like with forgiveness, you have to forgive from the heart.
Yeah.
Our worship isn't just not going through the motions, it's supposed to be from the heart. And so that's the challenge for us in the discipline. But the beauty is because God knows what's best for us. And He knows that if we can make it a genuine, from the heart part of our lives will be better.
Mm-hmm.
And when we do water those negative things and we have this superficial practice of our faith, It's not a good place to be in when you're struggling with bitterness or resentment or negativity or any of those things. You don't feel good. You don't feel happy. You're giving off vibes. You may be going through the motions, but you're giving off vibes maybe that other people can pick up on about your life as a Christian. And I think about, those times where maybe I said the right thing in the moment to someone. Maybe it was a moment of conflict. And I said the right thing, I probably even had the right look on my face. I knew what I was supposed to say and how I was supposed to handle it, and I did that. But in my heart, in my mind, I'm angry, resentful. Maybe I'm holding it against her when I go home and I don't let it go, and it's always there. I've always got that now. That's not from the heart, and it's not doing me any good. It's poisoning me. But if I
Mhm.
get to that point where I'm watering that kind of grace and patience and love and self awareness, how much better for me, even when I offer it understanding, forgiveness, whatever the occasion calls for, from the heart,
Yeah.
cheerfully, and can
There's,
let it go and move on. How much better for me, even.
mhm. I think you attract a different kind of friend too. And this is something I was thinking about, that it it matters so much who you surround yourself with,
Hmm.
because if you are around people that that they do think cynically, or they're disdainful of
Mhm.
people, or they're insulting, or they're always angry, or they're whatever those qualities that we don't want to be like, that if you're that way, that's the kind of people that you're going to attract. And that's not a good place to be in. It's just going to lead you down the wrong path. um,
Yeah.
so it's kind of that old proverb about, be the kind of person that you want to be around. Start with you. And so that, I think that makes a huge difference, is who we associate with. But I was also thinking about ruts, and we've talked about this regarding marriages and how
Mm.
we fall into these ruts. And whatever behavior, if it's the rut of an argument when you're tired, or how you communicate with one another, if
Hmm.
it's that we just fall into these same old ruts. And for lack of a better word, it's comfortable, even though it's
Mm.
very uncomfortable. But it's like driving in an old country road, and there's these grooves, these ruts that we drive in, and the tires want to stay in them, because if you
Hmm.
try to go either way, your tires are bouncing against the sides of the ruts, and so your tires naturally stay in these ruts. And that's our thought pattern, our thought process is, if we continually are cynical or sarcastic, or just think the worst about people, or we're angry, or whatever it is,
Hmm.
that's just comfortable, but yet it leads to so much discomfort. So we have to force ourselves out of that rut and
Hmm.
think in a different way, and learn to train our minds. And that's a biblical concept as well, learning how to train our minds and think on the right thing. So
Hmm.
anyway.
Yeah, I like that. And nobody wants to be in a rut. So it's good to have that reminder. And it's like they say when you complain, how easy it is to find more things to complain about, how easy it is to create
Mm-hmm.
that rut. And, but the opposite of that is true. If you're looking for blessings to acknowledge and things to be thankful for, people to appreciate, you know, that attracts more things to be thankful for.
I like your voice.
Ah,
But that's why prayer journals and blessing journals are so
yes.
helpful, because it makes you focus on those things. And if you train your mind, or train your hand to write
Hmm.
down every morning, or maybe in the evening, it'd be better. Every evening, say 5 things that were great about today, or 5 blessings from today, or just making yourself think about what went right, instead of when we lay down at night and think, what a rotten day this was, because this and this and this went wrong.
Yeah.
But just trying to be intentional about thinking
Yeah.
about good things.
Or how about even bringing up an opportunity to share that? observing your blessings and then talking about them
Mhm.
might feel kind of awkward at first, but I imagine it'll be replacing a lot of things we've been saying that aren't that great.
Yeah. Yeah. I looked at, I was thinking about being intentional. And so I wrote down some of these things that we don't want to be. And I know we've already said a lot of them, but then I looked at the antonym, what's the opposite? So if we find ourselves being cynical,
Hmm.
what's the opposite? And this may not be completely the only word that could be used, but optimistic. Because someone who's cynical, oh, that just sends me running the opposite way. Someone that's constantly cynical, I don't want to be around that. I don't want to be that. There's so much good, especially from a Christian. You know, if you can't find something to be optimistic about, then you're just a cynical person. But then I thought about disdain, and that's another one of my kind of my pet peeves, when someone is just so dismissive of someone else and disdainful. And the opposite of that is to treat someone with respect or admiration. And I think there are some people that would say, I can't do it if it's not genuine. And that's just sad to me. If you can't find something good to say about someone, then you're not looking hard enough.
Yeah.
But to be
It's kind of
disdainful of
arrogant.
someone, oh, it is. But negativity, the opposite of that is positivity. Um, Anxiety, that's another one. And I feel like that's such a big deal now. And we used to just say we were nervous about something. Now we say, I have anxiety about this. And without going down that fraught path, to use that word, um, I think that it's just become something that is so common to say, I have anxiety about that. And so I'm going to avoid that completely because it makes me anxious. But on the other hand, what if we fight that? What if we try really hard? And I know that this brings up a lot of feelings and a lot of emotions and a lot of, it's all the feels. But I think there's a lot of times we really have to fight that anxiety and work toward peace, because God brings peace. Um, that's a whole nother topic that someone else can deal with. But just to say, I have anxiety, and I think all of us do. And I know that some of us have worse problems with it than others. Legitimately, I'm not dismissing that, but I just want us to be careful to not label all of our discomfort as being anxious about something, when really we could work towards being at peace about something, because God wants us to be that way. And then there's doubt. We have doubts, we have fears. And what's the opposite of that? It's assurance and faith and strength and things like that. So anyway, being intentional about
Oh, I love
knowing,
that.
naming what just being able to name what we're not wanting to water and what we are wanting to water.
Yeah. I think that's my favorite thing you've ever said on this podcast. I really do, because
Really?
it's so practical. And I'm thinking about personally, I like action steps. I like to take things from the abstract and say, okay, but what does that really mean? And I feel like you just did that. I could sit down with a piece of paper and some quiet time and an honest heart and some prayer, and maybe list out what are the things that I've allowed to be a part of my life that don't have any business being a part of a Christian's life. What are the things
Mm.
that I've been watering that I'm not proud of? And they would be some of those very words that you just mentioned. And then I could look up the opposite of those words and write them down beside it and know this is what I'm aiming for.
Yeah.
And when I do have those moments of disdain or cynicism or complaining, negative spirit, whatever it might be, um, snarkiness, whatever it might be.
What's the opposite of snarky?
What's the opposite of snarky? A speech seasoned with grace,
Yeah,
seasoned
there
with
you
salt
go.
and grace.
Good answer.
Um, Write that down beside it so that I know I'm going to put this off and put this on,
Yeah.
and be more conscientious about it, be more intentional about it, catch myself in those moments of thought. And if that negative side thought comes into my head, make sure that what comes out of my mouth is on the opposite side of it so that I'm retraining my brain, creating new ruts in my mind. I think that's extremely practical.
Mhm.
So good.
Thanks.
You're welcome. I also ran across a couple of verses that talk about clothing ourselves with certain things. And the first one is Romans 13:12. Starts off by saying we're to cast off certain things, these works of darkness, according to this verse, and put on the armor of light. And then verse 14 says, put on the Lord Jesus Christ and make no provision for the flesh. And some
Mhm.
versions read, clothe yourself with the Lord
Yeah.
Jesus Christ and make no provision for the flesh. And the other one is Colossians 3, verses 12 through 14. Put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved. That goes back to our identity because of who we
Mhm.
are. Put on then, and listen to these words: compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness,
Mhm.
patience, all these things that we are just talking about watering, bearing with one another. If you have a complaint against another, forgiving each other, um, putting on love, which binds everything together in unity. But again, some versions read, instead of put on, clothe yourselves with. And I'm mentioning that because um, I've always been kind of interested in things about like creating your curated wardrobe or your own personal style. I'm not good at it, mind you, and I don't actually have one, but I wish I did.
Yes, you do. You
I
do.
wish I did. And a lot of times they'll say things like, if you want to come up with your own personal style, unique to you, they'll say, come up with 3 words that you think describes your style or that you want to describe your style. So you think, what do I really, really want to get out of my wardrobe? And it might be words like, I want it for it to look pretty, or maybe you're more of I just want it to be comfortable. I want it to be classy. I like that kind
Mhm.
of traditional classy. So you come up with your 3 words. And then they also say, come up with the words to describe how you want others to see you. So when you're getting dressed and you're presenting yourself, you know, out in life, what impression do you want to give off? How do you want others to see you? You come up with those 3 words. And you might use words like approachable, confident, feminine, just
Mhm.
romantic, whatever power. Some women might say powerful, competent, whatever vibe do you want to get off by the way that you're dressed. You come up with those 3 words, and then you take all these things and you use them to identify your personal style when it comes to what you're putting in your closet. And I couldn't help but think we could do the same thing spiritually. Um, what kind of person do you want to be described as? How do you want people to see you as a
Mhm.
Christian woman?
Mhm. Yeah.
And we would all say things like, I want to come across as somebody who's loving and kind and patient and gracious and compassionate, all these things that we just read about in Colossians 3. That's the vibe that we want to give off, that we want to represent Christ, and we want people to see us in that way. Um, so I thought, what if we just chose 3? You know, we could come up with a long list of wonderful attributes and things, but what if we just chose 3, our 3 words? Maybe there are 3 things that we know are missing in our wardrobe. We could be working on patience
Mhm.
because we lose our temper or we're impatient with people or whatever. We could be working on forgiveness or grace or compassion, whatever it might be. Maybe it's 3 things that we need to work on, but just choose 3 specific things that we would like to be described as or known for, and work on watering those 3 things this week. Pray about it, be intentional about it, come up with practical ways to implement it. Does it involve having a conversation with somebody? The things that we say, how we respond to our children or our husband, whatever it is, just choose 3 and we can work on them and focus on it and practice it, the adding to growing in these Christian graces this week.
When you said the word forgiveness, I thought, man, that right there is one that I think probably most of us really need to think about. what do you talk about watering something when we have a grudge against someone or we have some bitterness against someone? That to me, probably we think about it, we mull it over, we pull it back out. You know, it's like you file it away, but you want to pull it back out when you see that person and think about how they wronged me and what they did that made me angry. So, I mean, that's probably at the top of a lot of our lists of things that we need to not do is to not water that grudge, but
Yeah.
to water the forgiveness. But when you were talking, I
Yeah.
was also thinking about, have you ever heard the term resting face?
Yes. Yeah. I don't have a
And
good
I
one.
know we laugh. Yes, you do. But
No,
I
I
know we
don't.
laugh about some people. We say they need to work on their resting face.
Mhm.
And I know I have had that. My mom used to tell me, especially when I was first married, like in my early 20s, I've told you about this. I saw a picture of myself looking at someone that I didn't like, which is not necessarily a resting face, but that's, something like that. You're like, whoa,
Yeah.
that's what I look like. I don't want to look like that. But I think your resting face often can kind of show who you are inside. And again, I realize that some of us, you don't realize you can be perfectly pleasant and be having all the great thoughts and it doesn't look like that. But sometimes I think maybe we need to put a picture, have a picture of our resting face
Hmm.
as a reminder of, I just think we know what we put in our minds comes out of our mouth and comes out in our face. And,
Yeah.
maybe if we think of it more concretely like that, this is what I look like. Well, this is what we look like to God.
Yeah.
This is what we look like to our family because we reveal a lot about our heart in the things that we say, the things we do, the way we look. So anyway, I just thought made me think
Well,
of resting face.
it that sort of made me uncomfortable because I started thinking about what if I got caught? I think I do a pretty good job of looking how I'm supposed to look when I'm with other people, right? But what if I got caught with one of my stinky faces toward Neil?
Mm-hmm.
What if somehow in our own home when I'm in the middle of going, somebody took a
I wish
snapshot
I
of,
had a screenshot of that.
well, I can do that when I'm
Yeah.
editing. I will find that screenshot. Um, but what if somebody took a snapshot of that and shared it with the world and I could see
Okay.
myself? What if somebody had a hidden microphone in my home,
Ew.
right? And the tone that I'm using with the people around me, my husband, my children, or the things that I'm saying about others to my husband, what if that was recorded and
Mm-hmm.
shared with the world? Doesn't that just give you the
Mm-hmm.
heebie-jeebies?
Oh,
But
it does. It's
that's
horrifying.
the that's the idea though. That's the idea of this heartfelt, what are you watering? And I do like the versions that say clothe yourselves with these things because how often are we clothing ourselves with the very things that we're supposed to be putting off?
Yeah.
And all those other negative attributes. That's what I'm pulling out of my wardrobe. I'm
Mm-hmm.
putting on this shirt of snarkiness today. This is what I'm wearing. This is me. And if it was that visible and that obvious, maybe we'd be a little more careful. But there's this intention of, I know I'm going to clothe myself with a spirit of kindness and sincerity and love. And that means that there shouldn't be too many moments in my private personal life with the people closest to me that they could catch me with a mean resting face, or they could listen to me say things I shouldn't be saying about other people, or
Mm-hmm.
talking in a way I shouldn't be talking to people
Yeah.
if I'm
There's a lot of
clothing
people.
myself.
There's a lot of people that I think take pride in that. I am who I am. This is me,
Hmm. Yeah.
and that makes me sad because that's just not going to be helpful. That's not how God wants us to be.
I've said that to Neil and the kids about my competitiveness.
You competitive? Never.
And Well, it really just comes out the most with certain people. Neil is at the top of the list. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, if I love to play games, but when I'm playing with him and he wins, I have the worst attitude about it. I'm a horrible loser to him. I don't know why. And he'll say, and he's doing it for me because he doesn't even like to play games. But he'll say, "Do you want to play a game?" And it's like he's taking his own life in his hands, at risk because if he wins, it doesn't go good for him. If he loses, that's not fun either. So here recently, he was like, he said something about playing a game, and I went, "No, better not." And he said, "Why not?" And I was like, "Because, if I lose, I hate it." And he said, "Well, don't be that way." And I actually said, "I can't help it. You think I want to be that way? For some reason, I can't help it. Losing to you drives me crazy." And he's just giving me this
Just
look
losing
like,
to him?
yeah, well, mostly, mostly. Most
Yeah.
other people, it didn't bother me. Sometimes my sister, but most other people. And he's just giving me this look like he completely does not get it. And he doesn't, because if he loses, it's just not a big deal. And for
Mm.
I lay some of the blame at his feet because he kind of gets this like smirky look on
Smug.
his face when he wins. But it's all my fault. But I say that. I'm
Did you
like, I
hear
can't,
that, Neil?
yeah, I know. I can't help it. That's just the way I am. Which is not true. Which is not true. That's just sort of a trivial example of, like, so I'm just gonna avoid games altogether.
Well, that's the first step. Is admitting you have a problem and then avoiding the games.
It's embarrassing. It really is. All right, anything else before we move on?
I don't think so.
Okay, do you have something good for us this week?
Well, I've debated it because it's a little bit lame, but it is something good. It's something that we use that we travel with,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a little bit lame. It's these Propel sticks that you add to your water.
Oh yeah.
Have you had those?
No.
I always have these in my purse because they're electrolytes. And I think John thinks that he really has, it's kind of like medicine to him, mental medicine. Because
Mm-hmm.
if I give him one of these, that fixes all of his problems.
Like Popeye and
His
his can of
hydration.
spinach.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably kind of what it is. But I mean, they have different flavors. They're not super cheap. It's like $4 for a package of 10, which I guess is not terrible. It's cheaper than buying a Coke, but we travel with these and
Mm.
it really, I think it does. There's something about having electrolytes. I think you don't like these because it says Gatorade electrolytes, but it doesn't taste like Gatorade. So I
Mhm.
think I've tried to share these with you before and you go, ew.
Did
But
I
it's
make that
kiwi
face?
strawberry. You made that, yeah, it wasn't a resting face, but it was a yucky face. Anyway, I think these
Hmm.
are helpful and it's kind of silly, but it's just one of those little things that we always travel with. I always try to have them in my purse and they make us feel better.
That is smart. And I probably should do something like that because I'm pretty sure I picked up something on the plane or in the airport from traveling back. And that's why I
Hmm.
got sick. And maybe if I'd been drinking something like that, it would have kept me from getting sick.
I'm sure it
Maybe.
would have.
Okay. Well, I meant to have something, but I forgot to write down the actual brand name. So I'm going to save that for next time. And instead, I'm going to do a little switcheroo here. I was initially going to do something with you in the beginning, but we had too much chit chat and I didn't. So I'm going to do it with you now. It's you
Uh-oh.
know how when your boys were little, did they ever do that would you rather
Hmm.
thing where they come up with these mostly dumb, silly scenarios? Which one would you rather be in? Well, I found one called a gross would you rather. And I
Uh-oh.
thought I would just really quickly ask you, would you rather have a bug fly into your eye or into your mouth?
I
Same. Would you rather hug a zombie or hug a mommy? A mummy.
sometimes a mommy is a zombie.
Would you rather hug
A
a zombie
zombie.
or hug a mummy?
Okay, well, if a zombie bites you, then you become a zombie. So probably a mummy. It
So I
would just
asked
smell
these
bad,
to
but it wouldn't kill me.
Neil said, it's funny everybody's thought process is because I ran these by Neil and he said a zombie because there's no such thing. Like
Mr.
you
Logical.
missed the point. I know. Would
Hmm.
you rather eat a soap flavored snow cone or toothpaste flavored ice cream?
Toothpaste flavored ice cream because it might be mint.
True. And mint chocolate chip's not bad. Would
Hmm.
you rather eat mustard all day or ketchup all day?
Ketchup. I like
All right,
mustard, but it's too strong.
to eat all day. All right, last
Hmm.
one. I saved the best for last. Would you rather lick earwax or lick a slug?
My earwax or someone else's?
Does it matter?
Slightly. Yeah. If it came out of my own ear, at least I know where it's been.
Blah, blah, blah.
Okay, would you rather find a hair in your food or on the floor that you're cleaning? That's kind of a dumb one.
You didn't answer my question. Would you rather
Um,
lick earwax or lick a slug?
I'm gonna go with um I'm gonna go with earwax
Oh.
and pray that I don't ever have to do it.
So that was my something good for you. You're welcome. It was just good for you, nobody else.
Yeah, I don't know how good that was for me.
All right. Well, I know you need to run. Enjoy your dinner and everything that you're doing tonight. And thanks for squeezing us in while you travel. We'll be praying for your safe travels and wonderful experiences on the rest of your trip.
Thank you. I appreciate your prayers.
Yeah. And to our listeners, thank you so much for listening in. And we always love to hear your thoughts. If you have things you'd like to share with us, please join us in the Facebook group, Looking Up with Kathy and Carla. And Carla, until next time,
Keep looking up.
I love you.
Love you too. Talk to you later.